Hey, what's up, guys? How y'all doing today? Well, baby, if your name is Diddy Sean Combs, you literally are praying, probably sacrifice pigeons in Central Park. Everybody is so excited and so happy on Diddy's side that he got this quote unquote legal victory. But you guys, we really need to talk about it. I'm not going to hold y'all too long. I got to get back to court. Court is actually starting at 2 o'clock. I thought it was starting at 12 o'clock, but it's actually starting at 2 o'clock. So let's just get into this. Okay, so what is going on? Okay, first of all, let's cut through a lot of this legal BS, shall we say, about the charges not getting dropped. Okay, the predicate acts, which are criminal acts, 100% got 100% got dropped on a state level. I'm going to explain why people are twisting that around to seem like it's less or more than it is. We're also going to talk about the prosecution. Yes, they streamlined their case. However, they streamlined the case because they really honestly thought that they could not convict. They truly thought that they could not convict on this crime. That is an issue all unto itself. So you guys, where are we actually at? Okay, let's get in to this. 1 second. Let's get into this. 1 second. Let me pull up my stuff. Okay, first of all, listen, I don't understand what is going on. First of all, there is still a very real chance that Diddy will be convicted. But the one thing that everybody is missing is these simple predicate crimes, which are actually criminal charges, is the very basis for the RICO conviction. If those predicate crimes are not proven, then there will absolutely not be a RICO conviction. Okay. Now, why is this so disturbing to many? Because you guys, again, we got to call a spade a spade. And again, I think the prosecution is doing a great job. I think this was a rare misstep. I don't understand why they dropped kidnapping. The arson, maybe because at the end of the day, no one saw the arson. It really was hearsay. Oh, I thought, but there was no hard proof. But when it came to kidnapping, right? Both Cassie, Jane, and Capricorn Clark had real honest to God proof of what that looked like. Now, that said, the prosecutions made a choice, and you need to ask yourselves, why did prosecution actually make that choice? Okay, it's not something that can just be scraped away. It's not something that can just be explained away. It's not something that we can say, oh, well, it just happened. But that doesn't mean it's over. I will say this once, and I will say this, guys, sitting here and acting like you're watching a game and that your team didn't just get their booty handed to them does not serve anybody. We are not here to live in la la land. As a matter of fact, I'm here to get to my point. Okay. I'm here to get to my point as quickly as possible. First of all, let me pull up my notes on the whole thing with RICO and predicate. All right. For people actually acting like the feds did not drop underlying charges is stupid. The predicate acts are what builds the house. And if you literally decide you're not going to put a foundation under your house, it doesn't really matter what you build. It is in entirety a bunch of legal semantics by people. Again, I'm not talking to anybody in particular. I'm talking about this dumb narrative that Diddy is letting going out around. Okay, let's call a spade a spade. This actually does look, I talked to a bunch of prosecutors. Whether or not they had a good reason of doing this, withdrawing charges as this late in the game, when the feds do not like to overcharge. Let me just say this again. I 100% think the feds are doing a great job. I think Diddy will be convicted, but this is actually disturbing. It makes the prosecution look defeated. It makes the prosecution look scared. And the timing is super, super poor. Okay. And the jury's going to notice. We spent 60% of the trial focusing on the kidnapping of Capricorn Clark, both counts, the kidnapping of Cassie, the kidnapping of Jane when she was held, and also what happened with Kid Cudi. Carrie testified, Bonna testified, Mia testified. Now you can argue who you believed and who you didn't, But that was what everything is. And now to take that away, now, and good news before we get into the RICO and the actual law, some people are hopeful that this was the case of the prosecution getting to have their cake and eat it too. What does that mean? Even though they're not bringing this up on charges, predicate crimes are underlying charges. They're underlying charges, okay? They're underlying charges. Don't let anybody tell you they're not. They 100% are. The whole point of the matter is when you look at what happened with that, okay? And when you look at the point of all these people testified, the jury is going to notice, wait a second, didn't you say A? Didn't you see B? And the jury's mind will wonder. The jury will say, well, hold on a second, because you told me, right? You told me that he committed this, this, and this, but is he really committed if you guys are not charging him with it? The testimony actually stands, but they're relying on the jury to now think about what Kid Cudi said, what Bonner said, what Carrie said, what Capricorn said. And they're relying on the jury to make the connection of, oh, that's coercion. Oh, that's force. Oh, that's fraud. I'm not saying the jury won't be smart enough to do it, but you see the way that they are gangbanging in these streets for this jury verdict, the jury verdict forms, and for the jury instructions. Nobody wants to leave things up to chance. You see just how conversations on social media sound backwards and half baked. And you're looking at people like, how could you think that? And they're looking at us like, how could you think that? You want the jury instructions to be narrowly tailored so that you can get what you want out of it. Okay? Now, hold on a second, right? Let's get into why people think that when it comes to the charges, that the RICO, that the RICO stands. Of course there's RICO. That 100% stands. However, okay? However, the predicate acts, they 100% could prove kidnapping. Arson, maybe. They could 100% prove trafficking of rugs. They could 100% prove so much because that's what the jury testified. To have all this testimony, and again, it does help the prosecution that at the end of the day, the testimony doesn't just go away. It goes to character testimony. Look at this kid. This guy's a bad guy. Usually character testimony is not allowed in trial. By pulling away these charges so quickly, then the character testimony comes into full focus, okay? The character testimony comes into full focus, and you can't unring a bell. I wonder if they're going to try to get a mistrial on those grounds because they heard so much character evidence, and then the prosecution pulled those charges again, right? Now, some people have said, right, that the statute has already run out on the arson and kidnapping and the DV on Cassie's hotel hallway beating, but the RICO and other 2 trafficking charges still stand. And it's not the case, this is from Alfie Black Letter Law, it's not the case that charges were dropped, but that the judge asked both sides to cut the fat from the jury charge. Okay, I disagree. You cannot say that you took predicate acts and that's the way you cut the fat. Predicate acts, which are the basis for RICO, yeah, no, I'm not buying that. I'm not buying it at all. Let me just say here, right? Let me say this, okay? One second, I'm getting sound. I'm getting text messages left and right from the Legal Eagles. Hold on. Okay. So let me just summarize, right? No, Diddy wasn't clear. Here's what drop predicate acts really mean. So what people are saying, the state charges weren't dropped. They were never filed. The feds just didn't pursue them. Stop it. Stop it. Because in a federal RICO case, here's the real legal truth, okay? I'm going through my messages, so I'm going to summarize. In a federal RICO case, the government can list predicate acts. These are specific crimes from either state or federal law used to show a pattern of racketeering activity. They're not filed as separate criminal charge counts. This is true, but they are part of the overall criminal charge. Think of it like ingredients in a cake. The cake is RICO. The predicate acts are the butter, the oil, and the eggs. You cannot have a RICO without the underlying criminal acts, okay? So they are charged underneath. To take away said serious ones at this late in the game, listen, the prosecution is most likely going to pull through this, but this is not a good thing. But let me just explain this because people need to know, okay? So here's what the prosecution did. They amended their proposed jury instructions and removed 4 criminal acts from the list tied to the RICO charge. If you do not have at least 2 predicate acts, you have no RICO. Now, what remains? The guns, right? What remains? The sex trafficking and obstruction of justice. There are people fighting left and right as to whether Jane or Cassie was ever sex trafficked. Nobody was fighting on whether there was a kidnapping. Nobody was fighting on whether there was an arson. Again, I trust the prosecutors. It's their opinion, but I'm talking about the real world jury. And ignoring this doesn't serve anyone, okay? Now, what were those? Attempted witness retaliation in California, attempted kidnapping in California, attempted arson in California, and aiding and abetting sex trafficking in New York. By pulling from the jury instructions, the prosecution effectively told the court, we're no longer asking the jury to consider these state crimes as part of a RICO. If you're not asking them to consider the state crimes, then where is the RICO? Okay? So, did they drop the charges? Yes, but only within the federal RICO case, okay? The RICO case remains, but part of the crimes you need to show beyond a reasonable doubt that this is RICO, they've taken away like at least half of them, if not 70%. So we get back to those naysayers saying, well, I don't see RICO. Because here's the thing, you can bribe someone, but it's not RICO, okay? It can just be a one-off. You can kidnap someone, but no, I think most kidnappings 100% are RICO. You can do aid and abet, but it's not RICO because you have to prove that they wanted to aid and abet. More importantly, right? They didn't file these crimes as standalone state charges in California or New York because of the statute of limitations considerations. They already knew that the statute of limitations had told. They weren't trying to get separate charges. They were trying to get them in a RICO conspiracy, and charges remain active in a RICO conspiracy until the conspiracy has ended, okay? But by removing them from RICO, the government made a strategic choice not to pursue them in this trial. When they say the charges were dropped, they're saying, right? Or when we're saying the charges are dropped, this is what I mean. The feds chose not to pursue these acts as part of the RICO case, and the states have not picked them up either. For everybody saying, oh my God, New York and California might pick up these charges, they can't. As separate state charges, they have already told. Now, I didn't ask the legal experts what would happen if you had a RICO California charge. Maybe they would breathe life. But for right now, the federal RICO charges are what could have made them actually go. Okay, hold on real quick. Hey, I'm on live. What's up? Hello? Oh, yeah, I'm on live. I'll be okay. Bye-bye. Okay, so, sorry, guys. Gotta do those Darla Miles. Hold on. Where was I? Anyway, the statute of limitations is already told on state so for the state to pick them up as separate criminal charges, it can't happen. The only way he could have been held accountable is RICO, okay? This is functionally the same as dropping them because they had a chance to bring them in. They presented all the evidence. That was 60% of the trial, and they chose not to make the jury consider them. Now, for those of you saying, they didn't drop anything, when you don't put something that you talked about in your closing argument on the jury instructions, you are automatically dropping charges functionally, okay? Now, this is where legal language gets slippery. The feds didn't need to file state charges. They used them as support for their big RICO case. And now that they've removed them, that's as close as it gets to dropping charges in federal court. Whether they're standalone or not, they are out. And the jury won't be voting on them, period. So he won't be held accountable for this. Okay. Now, for everybody, again, just want to make sure we all know saying that they dropped the charges, it's not legally wrong. That's not getting the law wrong. What is said in that assessment is accurate in both legal effect and practical impact. But let's break down why someone might try to actually say that's not the case, or Diddy's team. Okay. Now, here's the truth. The feds dropped the state-based charges by removing them from RICO predicate list. That's functionally the same as dropping them, which I 100% believe, right? Here's why it's true. In the RICO case, predicate acts like attempted arson, kidnapping, and etc. are not separate charges, but they are part of what the jury considers in order to convict in the overall RICO. You guys, do you really think that someone is going to send Diddy away for almost life for having a few guns with sold off serial numbers? Obstruction of justice, and we saw the evidence where he reached out and was like, yo, I can take care of you, and 2 SMEX trafficking acts, one of which most people are not even buying, and I believe the victims, but a lot of people are ignorant. And then there's Cassie. True, you could get it, but this makes things harder. Okay. By removing them from the jury instructions, the government is no longer asking the jury to consider the crimes. The evidence tied to those acts may still exist, but the legal significance has been withdrawn. So even if no one filed standalone state charges in New York or California, listen, we're 100% correct in saying that the allegations were pulled back, and that is the government dropping that from the line of attack. And that is serious. Now, that said, listen, I'm considering all things right now, because as much as like people want to be like hubba hubba bubba, right, about like what this could mean, I had to look at, did he cut a plea deal? Did he cut a secret plea deal? That happens all the time. This is unprecedented for a federal government to go in the beginning of trial, take all this time getting an indictment, do all these charges, bring all the victims in for us to listen to, and then at the last moment be like, you know what? Never mind. It's unprecedented. Now, here's the thing. I do agree that they streamlined it. They thought for whatever reason that it would confuse the jury. But one of the reasons they say they confuse the jury is because they somehow don't think that they have proven those aspects. I disagree with them. They're the federal prosecutors. They know better than me. They have way more experience than me. They do this for a living. So I will take my opinion and just pray to God that this feeling I have in my gut is wrong. Okay? I will just pray to God that the thing, some people be like, oh my God, Tisa lied. Worry about you know what? I'm not going to make any mean comments because Jesus loves me. Okay. Right? My whole point is with saying that there might be a secret plea deal or he might have given it, that is actually just using common sense. You really think that it's normal out the blue when it's time for jury instructions after both cases have rested for the the prosecution to drop so many charges without using your legal brain and asking, could there be anything else going on in the background? Because at the end of the day, nobody knows. Well, okay, let me just say at the end of the day, I don't know, but I damn sure know the people criticizing me really don't know. The people criticizing us. Anyway, right? Now, here's why people are trying to say that we're wrong, right? And by we, I mean the community, because they're splitting hairs. They're getting caught up in the language. You can't drop a charge that was never officially filed. But here's what they're missing. In RICO, listing a crime as a predicate act is a legal move. It requires evidence. It requires jury instruction, and it impacts conviction, and it impacts sentencing. Removing it removes any liability. Okay? Under federal RICO law, using state crimes as predicate acts means you're asking the jury to consider those crimes as part of the bigger conspiracy. You're asking to find without a reasonable doubt that he did commit A, and he did commit B, and he did commit C. And when you commit A, B, and C, that is RICO. Again, where's the RICO? Okay. When the prosecution pulls them from the jury instructions, that's dropping them. It may not be a standalone charge filed in state court, but the legal effect is the same. The jury won't be rolling on them. That's not a technicality. That's a real strategy. Okay. Now, what could they actually gain from this? Okay. What could they gain from this? They're streamlining. They thought for whatever reason that those other charges under California state and New York state law were too shaky to actually stand alone. Okay, fine. You streamlined. But you guys, why would they streamline? What is going on? We need Diddy actually held accountable. All right. And when they go and they streamline like this, it sends a message to the jury. And I don't care what anybody says. If you look at the way human beings are, at least somebody on the jury, who knows what people are Googling? Who knows what their family's telling them? Who knows what this looks like? On top of that, I've said it again. If you bring a juror to water, how do you make them drink? You're counting on the fact that they'll be like, wait, Diddy is a bad guy? Because here's a logical argument. And I want to see what they do in closing argument to tie it all up. It's not over. And I do think that they're going to get him. I just think that the whole life sentence, I don't know. But here's the thing. If somebody's talking to me and they're like, word, he committed kidnapping, he did this, the first thing I would think is, why didn't you charge him with it then? If what he did was so bad and so illegal, where are the charges? And don't give me RICO, because then you're asking the jury to decide through their feelings that that's the coercion. Decide through their feelings, that's the force. Decide through their feelings, that's the fraud. No, you want to clearly outline what each element is and point. He did A, that's B. He did B, that's C. He did D, that's E. And if you have A, B, C, D, and E, that is RICO. They're no longer doing this. Again, I want to be clear. I trust the prosecution. They've been doing it. I was about to say longer than I have, right? But they've been doing it. They know this. They know, I'm sure they confer with their superiors and all this stuff. But one thing I do know is something is just not adding up. Really quick, Grania 5, thank you for the super chat. Better Off Independence at Tisa, you're the bomb. What you for a news anchor? Thank you. Sycaris said, love your reporting style. It'll take too long to explain, just different. What is your background and education? Well, I am a human being, and I'm a mama and daddy tells daughter. Lisa La Tarute. Thank you so much for joining the family. Monica 22 said, hi, Tisa, you're doing amazing. Thank you. Miss Cat said, Diddy will not avoid jail. I agree with you, but I want the book thrown at this mofo. I can moderate for you because the trolls came out of the bushes. Keep going. Maybe let the trolls come out the bushes. First of all, half of this is not traffic. The other half are in my comments because their faves that they follow can't make a contingent argument except for the fact that their hats are too tight and they hate Tisa. I mean, it is what it is. When men can't step to other men, they want to come to other women and they can't attack the argument. So they just listen to lies and manipulation. B Dizzle say, stay under the blood, Tisa. Woosa, woosa. Yes. And Yana Artist said, great work, Tisa. Thank you. And Chosen One said, this looks like such amateur error on their part. It does. And you guys, let me just say this. There's nothing wrong with saying that. It's like watching a basketball team. It's nothing wrong in admitting that your team lost a shot or they're down by 7. Okay, we lost the shot. You don't get to make every shot you shoot. However, we are still way up and we are going to win. But I am nervous about this jury now because it goes back to, do you believe Jane and do you believe Cassie? Do you? Do you? It goes down to that. And do you believe that telling Jane, I'll pay your rent, rises to the level of obstruction of justice to convict under a RICO? That's what it goes down to. And will that jury actually believe that? You know, listen, you said for over 20 years, Diddy has hurt, threatened, and possibly unalive people. Saddest part, these weren't even the worst cases. Prayers for the victims. Thoughts and prayers for the victims. Bonnie Lynn, a.k.a. Bessie, said, Tisa, I love you. Thank you for keeping us updated. You're welcome, Bonnie. And Honeybee Therapy, what's up, girl? Thank y'all so much. Thank you for the super chat. And also, Joan John said, just got here. What do you think is not adding up? Blessings. Honestly, listen, I don't know what, I get it. The prosecution streamlined. That's a savvy move. That's a savvy move in the beginning. Right now, it looks sloppy. It looks like they got spooked. It looks like something happened and they were like, you know what? Just forget it. And they're going into, we don't want to confuse the jury, but we got to look at what happened in the YSL trial. They streamlined. They didn't want to confuse the jury. And look what happened. Look what happened. Because they said, if it was really that bad, how come you didn't bring them up on charges on this? How didn't you bring up on charges on this? Also, Katrina Payne, thank you, said, Tisa, do you see that they're saying that somebody was arrested? Yo, listen, let me go check on that too. I don't know what's going on. It is the witching hour. I will say this. Court is starting at 2:00. I'm running 10 minutes late because I wanted to go live. I'm going into court. Hit me up after at 5. We get out. There is going to be some mess happening right now about the instructions. I'm going to find out everything I can.